Hi everyone and welcome back. Today we're looking at Mercury retrograde. It just went retrograde yesterday on October the 13th in the sign of Scorpio. And in terms of looking at the degrees in your chart, so you know which house to look at, we have that it went retrograde yesterday in 11 degrees of Scorpio. It will go all the way back to 25, nearly 26 degrees of Libra, and then come back again where it will station direct on that day, the 3rd of November, at 25, almost 26 degrees of Libra, coming back and finishing its retrograde zone or the cycle on November the 19th, again at 11 degrees of Scorpio. So what we're going to do is take a look at some tarot through each of the houses to see what sort of themes we're talking about here. And when we're talking about Mercury retrograde, we're talking about, of course, there's all the things that people usually say. So things like don't sign any documents, communication will be difficult, travel plans might be disrupted, and your computer might not work. Technology might be a difficulty and things like that. And sure, we can look at those things and those are interesting to observe, but today I'll be looking more at what it means to be going retrograde in terms of a transformative and personal growth perspective. So Mercury retrograde means that we will be going inward and rethinking a lot of things and relearning a lot of things, because Mercury rules things like our learning, our thinking, our speaking, our communication, the way that we gather information and piece it together. So it's time to rethink those and take another look. And since it will be spending most of its time in Scorpio, then what we're looking at here is we will be rethinking and relearning some deep things, some really transformative things that we might need to purge, things that we need to deeply change. So we'll be having a look at that through the houses, and we'll have 2 cards per house, but one for sort of representing if you have Mercury retrograde in Scorpio in a particular house, and then what it will be when it reaches Libra. So potentially, and like in my chart, that will mean Mercury will end up in 2 different houses. So for the first reading, I will look at one house, and then the second reading, you might need to look at another house. So again, you really want to look at between 11 Scorpio all the way back to the late minutes of 25, almost 26 degrees of Libra, just to see if perhaps you'll be watching the video for just one house only, or whether you need to have a look at 2. And you'll find all the timestamps below. And if you really get something out of this and you're enjoying these transit videos, I would, mixed with some tarot, I would love if you could like and subscribe and maybe recommend to a friend. Thanks. Okay, so let's take a look at Mercury retrograde in the first house for both when it's in Scorpio and in the first house in Libra. So as I said before, maybe you need to look at a different video for Libra, depending on how your chart is laid out. So in the first house, we'll be rethinking and relearning things to do with transforming who we really are and about how we are ourselves, what we want for ourselves. It's all about your identity, your will, your sense of who you are in the world. So there's some big things to rethink here and some deep things. So in Scorpio, we have the Page of Wands. And so the Page of Wands is all about really feeling quite inspired and creative and full of energy to start something new, but without a plan. So possibly as Mercury entered Scorpio and entered your first house of identity, you've come up with some real inspiration for what you want to do for yourself, everything to do with yourself. But at the moment, you are rethinking, and perhaps there's some things that you need to relearn about how to actually put that inspiration into practice. So perhaps there are some things that you are deeply changing about yourself. You have some ideas on how to do that. And this is saying, okay, that's great. You're going in the right direction, but you need to think more about how's it going to come into place. And in the next 3 weeks, this is not the time to put the actions in place. It's to pause and think about that a little bit longer. As Mercury goes retrograde and goes into Libra, if that's in the first house as well for you, then what we're looking at here is the 8 of Cups in reverse. So in Libra, it will be looking at rethinking about some of the ways in your life that are perhaps unbalanced and that need balance restored. And it also has to do with relationships. So perhaps this is asking you that you need to rethink and take another look about you're deciding on whether to stay or go in some sort of situation. You're thinking, should I leave something behind? Should I leave all of this behind, all of these cups behind, and start afresh? Or is there something that I need to keep? So these are the sort of themes that you'll be thinking about. Now, maybe it is actually a relationship because this is when it's in Libra, but it might be more to do with yourself in the relationship. Is there something that you need to leave behind about yourself rather than leaving the person altogether? Or leaving it behind, is that actually meaning you're sacrificing and sabotaging yourself in some way? So yeah, that's the energy for Mercury retrograde in the first house. Let's take a look now at Mercury retrograde in the second house in Scorpio. So the second house is probably time for you to be rethinking something about your innermost values. I mean, the second house is to do with money, so we could be rethinking things around that. But remember, we're thinking of it from a Scorpio point of view, so we really want to be going deep. So sure, the way that you make money is potentially a manifestation of your values, but really let's just stick to talking about self-value, what you value, your self-worth, how you value yourself, and those sorts of things, and perhaps what you are deeply transforming there. So in Scorpio, we're looking at the King of Cups in reverse. Actually, I think there's quite a lot of reverse cards today, which makes sense with all the retrograde because it's a lot about this introspection. And I think this really just corresponds to everything I was saying, that it's time to think about what you value, but what you value emotionally. Or it's really a time to use your emotions, to do the emotional work, to tap into questions about transforming your self-worth and the things that you do value. So I think for sure it's a time to rethink, but also re-feel and to tap into your emotions regarding issues around self-worth and what's coming up for you in this time, because it's undergoing, or it's an opportunity to undergo some significant change. And then in the second house, if we have Libra, we have here the Empress in reverse. So the meaning for the second house really seems to double up. This is all about tuning into your emotions, and this is about really making self-love a huge priority, really going inwards. So I really think that in the second house, and then we're talking Libra. So if, for example, Mercury does first go retrograde in Scorpio and then later in Libra in the same house for you. It's do this first. Really start reflecting on and rethinking and thinking about how you feel about yourself and how you value yourself. And when that's done, the ultimate relationship you need to be establishing, which is a Libra thing, is with your own self-love. And you need to be relearning or learning for the first time perhaps how to show yourself the self-love that you need, because everything else second house related cannot happen unless these are firmly in place. Moving on now to the third house, the house of communication, all the house of really Mercury things as well. So about learning, about gathering information, even about your immediate community, and also perhaps your relationships with siblings and things like that. So what we're talking about here is a rethinking about those issues in a way that is deeply transforming and is changing. So if we take a look at Scorpio, we have the Death card in reverse, which is a very Scorpio card. And in reverse, it's very, really aligns with this whole retrograde. And what we're talking about here is really very, very strongly now a deep transformation of something related to third house. So it's like a double up energy of Scorpio and the retrograde energy. So perhaps you're being called to really rethink perhaps the way that you are talking to some people or communicating with someone. And you need to look inwards, or perhaps even just the way you talk to yourself. Something needs to change about the way that you are relating to your immediate environment and community, and the way that you're representing the facts to yourself, to others. So for sure, there's something about the way that you are talking that needs to be changed, or changing it could help change something within you. If we move on to the third house in Libra, we have the Five of Swords also in reverse. So Libra is about perhaps the balance of your communication, or the way you're communicating in relationships. And the Five of Swords in reverse is very much about reconciliation. So really feel like this is a flow-on effect. You need to change something about the way that you're communicating with others. And as Mercury goes into Libra, and if it's in your third house still, it's a time to perhaps reconcile, or the way that you change your communication can allow for some sort of reconciliation in a relationship. Or if it resonates with you, then I think you'll know who we're talking about in this situation. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you feel like this is giving you some good guidance. Mercury retrograde in the fourth house. So the fourth house has everything to do with your family. So this could literally be, over the next few weeks, things to consider about your family, or about your emotional well-being. Those are probably the two that we'll be thinking about here. So perhaps something needs to be rethought regarding changing some dynamics in your family, or changing something in your own emotional well-being. And in Scorpio, we have the Nine of Wands. And so this is a real feeling of frustration, like that you are constantly being tested. And in a way it is. It's saying you're being tested still and yet again. But your resilience is being tested. You're wanting to show yourself that no matter what, you do keep going. So if it is something to do with your family, then perhaps what we're thinking of here is something's been changing. Some dynamics are undergoing change, and you just, as you would in the middle of a battle, you just need to pause and just think about it a bit more and think about what you need to do for yourself to continue on. So do you need to have better boundaries? Is it your own emotional well-being that needs to be looked at further, transformed a little bit more? It's time to really think about those things at this stage in whatever has been going on in family dynamics or even in your own emotional well-being this year. And if we take a look at once Mercury goes into Libra, and if Libra is also your fourth house, for sure that's talking about things to do with the balance of your family relationships, really, or your relationship with your own emotional world. And here we have the Queen of Swords. So at this point, when Mercury will be retrograde in the last degrees of Libra in your fourth house, the Queen of Swords is saying to be very sure of yourself, just to be very certain, to be strong of mind, to have rationally connected the dots, and to be able to clearly explain yourself. So I think that's what we're seeing here. So I hope that helps. Now at the fifth house, and the fifth house can be to do with romance, creativity, and the inner child, and really showing your inner self and being confident to do so. So with that, and looking at Mercury and Scorpio fifth house, we're looking at rethinking or learning again something to do with things we need to change about our innermost self and the way that perhaps we represent that to the world. So in Scorpio, we have the King of Swords in reverse. So this is talking about sort of inner power, and Scorpio is all about power and powerlessness. So it seems that it's time to pause and reflect on your inner sense of where power comes from. So if it's to do with your creativity, perhaps you feel like you give your power away, that you care about the opinions of others too much about what it is you're doing. You're looking for that recognition. And this is asking you to rethink that, change that up a little bit, and think about the fact that your power only ever comes from within. And that's something you need to think about during this time. Once we're moving Mercury into Libra again, if that's in the fifth house here, we have the Devil upright. So there might be, and it might be actually still related to this or completely separate, there's something that you're a little bit obsessed with. You're addicted to something, fifth house. So are you addicted to the attention of other people? Are you finding yourself in a romance where you just feel completely out of control and infatuated with this person? And it is now in Libra, so we're talking about things to do with relationships and fifth house, so it very much could be a romance. But if it's back to what we were talking about before with creativity, are you too reliant and almost all consumed by the applause that you get from others? Is that what you relate to? And is that taking you away from what it really means to be creative? And if it is in this romantic relationship, then if it's just started, especially, and usually the fifth house are new romances and not long-lasting relationships, if it's something that has just started, are you obsessing about it in such a way that you are really losing who you are and not really showing who you are in your relationship, and perhaps that's permeating into the rest of your life as well. Okay, taking a look now, the sixth house, which is to do with everything to do with like work and health and routines and habits, but also to do with the way that you discern and perceive yourself and others, and how you integrate and analyze your interactions with the world. And again, this is a very Mercury house, so it'll be interesting to see what happens as Mercury retrogrades here for you in Scorpio. So we have the Tower in reverse. So this really is lining up with the whole Scorpio theme of a powerful inner transformation. So this time really could change something for you, or it could indicate that you need to take a look at how you're scared of change. So perhaps there is something happening in your health or your work that is really changing, and either you're very fearful of that change and how you will come out of that, so you need to rethink how you think about change as a negative rather than a positive. Or perhaps in those areas something is changing and you just need to sort of hold on for the ride to come out of it the other side significantly transformed. All these transits, all these energies are always to help bring about growth within us, and so that's something to hold on to, that there is change, and change does not mean it's bad. Change means that it's an opportunity for personal growth and evolution. And then once Mercury is retrograde into Libra, and if that's also in your sixth house, then here we're looking at the Seven of Pentacles. So the Seven of Pentacles is really about starting some work, doing some work. You don't get any results straight away, but you've planted a seed. As you can see when you look at this card, you can see her sort of putting her energies into this small little plant, planting the seeds of magic to watch it grow. So it's to perhaps just to rethink what seeds you are planting, and to potentially rethink the way that you relate to your work as well, and the effort, so the seeds or the effort that you put into your work, to rethink those as well. It might not be work, it could be something to do with your health, with your habits. Just to rethink those efforts in those areas and the way you relate to your own effort, and what you might need to change about that or do differently so that works out to be more beneficial for you. Okay, so taking a look now at the 7th house, and 7th house is about your significant relationships and your partnerships. And what we might be looking at here is how those are changing and the transformations taking place, and what you might need to rethink about how your relationship is changing or what needs to change, what needs to transform. So if we have a look in Scorpio, we have the 10 of Wands in reverse, which indicates that either you or your partner are carrying or feeling like they are carrying the burden of the relationship, and probably something needs to change regarding that. So is it you? Do you feel that way? Is it really true? You need to stop and think about that some more. Or you need to think about the way in which perhaps you are expecting this of your partner, and how it's stifling the depth at which you can go to in your relationship. Once Mercury retrogrades into Libra, which is also the relationship house, we have the 3 of Pentacles in reverse. Which really resonates with this. Somebody feels like their work of the relationship is not a team effort, and that in fact it's really out of balance. Someone is doing more than the other person, and something about that needs to be rethought about, and then once thought about, communicated. This is not the time necessarily to talk about these things. It's the time to think and reflect on them, and in a few weeks to come up with a plan, to discuss, to communicate about them, and to make plans for how to change. Take a look at the 8th house, and the 8th house is the Scorpio house. So really a double up theme of change and transformation. And it can be about the house of marriage, sex, death, taxes, the things that really change our life. So anything that really changes, and whether it's inner change or things going on the outside. So with Mercury retrograding, there's some things to rethink about there. Let's have a look for Scorpio. We have the 7 of Swords. So it can mean that there is some sort of deception and betrayal going on, which again is a very 8th house theme. So that's sort of a third indicator. So perhaps there is something you need to think about. I mean, it might be in your marriage, or it might be to do with your financial dealings with other people. Could be in those areas, or it could just be how in touch you are with yourself, and that in some way you are betraying something about your deepest self, or there's some deception going on in any of these areas, and you need to think carefully about that, reflect on that, really investigate again, look at it again, gather some facts again over the next few weeks, and see what comes out and what is revealed by November 3rd. And then if we have a look at 8th house Libra, we have the 4 of Swords. So if you were doing this and then you move over into still in the 8th house and then back into Libra, doing this is going to be very taxing, looking at these things deeply. So what you're going to need some rest, basically. You're going to need to sort of restore the balance in some way, or restore the balance in the way that you are relating to your marriage, relating to things that are going on deep inside yourself, or heavy things in your life that are changing. So it is calling for at that time for some rest and a pause, which of course you need anyway. If you are doing Mercury retrograde things, you need to be really taking a step back, relaxing. Now we're moving on to the ninth house, and the ninth house is to do with your beliefs, your truth, philosophies, culture, really knowing things, your intuition, finding meaning. It can be long distance travel, adventure. It's all the things that expand your mind. And Mercury being there, it's really, and a Scorpio flavor, we're really talking about rethinking and revisiting the things that expand your horizons and therefore really change your life. So let's have a look for in Scorpio. We have the Two of Swords in reverse. So this indicates that you're undecided, or perhaps you should be undecided about something, ninth house. So perhaps there's something you're thinking of changing in terms of something to do with truth or something that you believe. You're thinking of changing that. Perhaps it's something in the current climate of the country you live in. You've been thinking about something, the philosophies, how it relates to your culture, and you're thinking about changing how you see something or your beliefs, but you're undecided. And the ninth house is really always about intuition. So you're undecided and you do have to make a choice, but don't make that choice now in the next few weeks. Do spend the time to rethink and research again and analyze again before making the decision. And when Mercury retrogrades into Libra, we have the Justice in reverse. So we're talking about the way that you relate to these issues, these beliefs, these truths, something cultural, philosophies, the way you relate to those. And what we're talking about there is something, you think there's something unfair, like there's a feeling of unfairness about these things. Something unfair going on in the way that you feel there's an unfairness, or you are being unfair in the way that you are relating to something, a way that you're seeing something, a perspective that you have, the higher viewpoint that you have. Okay, so it's time to rethink that. Rethink the way in which you are being unjust or a little bit unfair in the way that you are seeing a truth that you hold, or a belief that you hold, or something cultural that you hold on to. And as you're thinking about it, see if that actually needs to be changed. Taking a look now at the 10th house, and this is the house of your career and your success and your projects and your achievements, and also the way that you structure your life and the rules and regulations and all those things. So we're talking about some changes and the ways in which all of that can be quite transformative. So let's look at Mercury retrograde in the 10th house, Scorpio. And we have the Six of Pentacles. And the Six of Pentacles is really about giving and receiving, and feeling like, okay, you want to think about the extent to which you think, okay, I have achieved significant wealth and I'm ready to share that, and I want to give to others. And in your career, perhaps it's a time to rethink about how you are giving to others. Are you doing that in a way that is aligned with your values and also helps you achieve the goals that you have for yourself? So it's a time to perhaps re-strategize your career, or rethink about it, or learn some more things about how you can really build a foundation of giving and receiving. So if it's for example, your own business or something like that. It's how much value that you can give others that really matters and really counts, and sees the flow come back to you. So something, just thinking about that and perhaps what needs to be changed in that area. And then if we have a look at Libra, so as Mercury retrogrades back into Libra, and if that's in your 10th house, and it might be, and then it might also go into another house, but take a look and see here. There's something about some sort of like misalignment. So you're not achieving the 10 of Cups. Something is out of alignment and you don't get to this happy conclusion. So it might be a misalignment in something to do with your values in your career. Maybe your career is not currently aligned with your values and you're ignoring that fact. You need to rethink about it. You need to reanalyze how your career is lining up with your values, and how your relationship with your career, with your projects match your deepest values and what you really want to achieve. Let's take a look now at the 11th house, which is your house of friendships, also your house of your humanitarian efforts, the way that you put your efforts towards a good cause and really offer your unique talents to that, and your group associations, and the way that you are a little bit revolutionary, and probably in these things you're quite deep. Okay, your friendships are quite deep, or you want them to be. And the things that you do, you really want to change the world quite significantly. So let's take a look at Mercury retrograde in Scorpio in the 11th house. And we have the 4 of Wands, which is all about celebration. This is about the harmony and really celebrating where you are. So perhaps there's something about your friendships or about the projects and that you're involved with, and you need to pause and think about either what should you be celebrating. Perhaps you're just forging ahead and not really looking at how much you have to celebrate and be grateful for, or it might be saying that, what do you need to do? What do you need to plan, think about, and analyze to get to this point where you will be at the point of celebrating? So either it's time to start thinking about thanking your blessings, or it's about how to plan to get there. And then if we look at Mercury retrograde in Libra in the 11th house, we have the King of Pentacles, which really resonates with this card as well, because it is about really abundance. And I mean, often it's to do with literal money abundance, or abundance of resources. But in the 11th house, we're talking about some sort of abundance of people, connections, friendships, or how you are relating to your abundance around those things, how you're relating to your ability to manifest whatever you want in a way that liberates you, in a way that can change the nature of how you are in the world. So again, I mean, being upright like this, both of them being upright, which I don't think we've had yet today, it is really saying to take a look at either how these things are already happening, how you already have something to celebrate, how you already have abundance, or to be looking at how you can reach this point for yourself in your friendships and in the causes and involvements that are really important. Finally, we have the 12th house, which is the house of your spirituality. It's sort of the mystical and the dreamy, and your connection to something beyond this earth. And on a more negative side, it's to do with the way that perhaps you feel trapped by your life, or the way that you trap yourself and confine yourself. So we'll see what energies we're dealing with here. But in Scorpio, with the Scorpio 12th house, I think for sure you're a very deep person, and you merge deeply with these things and probably have quite a deep and active spiritual life. So perhaps we're talking about those things today. But with Mercury retrograde, and we have the 9 of Pentacles. So this is quite earthly, right? When we're talking about something so like watery with a Scorpio and 12th house, this is really grounding some sort of self-sufficiency. So probably what we're looking at here is it's a chance or a time to be really rethinking about the ways in which you provide for yourself spiritually, versus the extent that you perhaps look outwards for those spiritual components of your life to be fulfilled. This is saying, okay, the key to that is to be self-sufficient in these matters. So do you need to meditate? Okay, do you need to learn about a new spiritual practice? Do you need to think about the form of prayer that you use, or something to do with that in a spiritual way? Or if it is a way that you are feeling trapped in your life, then in what way can you build your self-sufficiency to free yourself, and to have that sort of ultimate freedom? Like, what do you need to change to get yourself out of the prison that you find yourself in, whether because of your own choices or life circumstances? But something about being self-sufficient is coming up here, and that is what needs to change. And then if we have a look at once Mercury retrogrades into Libra in the 12th house, well, these are quite similar, but this is the 9 and this is the Queen of Pentacles. So yeah, it's really providing for yourself, and this goes a little bit further, not just for yourself, but also for others. It's the really, it is the self-sufficient, hardworking, feminine energy with a plan, really successful, works hard, can juggle a lot of practical things, again, which is very different to this spiritual element. But again, it's how can you provide for yourself when it comes to either your spirituality, or what practical things can you do to free yourself from things that are holding you back, to free yourself. What can you do? What can you plan? What can you think about? What can you learn about, read about, talk about? All Mercury retrograde things that will allow you to take the leap into the next thing, and that sets you free and sets you sort of on the next layer, or the next circle on the spiral up and out into a better life for yourself. So looks like we're talking about some things to practically change surrounding these sort of really big life questions, the ultimate way that we live our life. So yeah, that one's quite deep, but also asking you to be very practical, which is very Mercury anyway. So I hope you really enjoyed these readings for each of the houses of Mercury retrograde in October and November 2020. If you have, I would really love it if you could like, subscribe, comment, share with a friend who might also enjoy it. And if you're enjoying these sorts of readings and you would like a personal reading, then please feel free to contact me. You can visit my website, email me, message me, whatever you like. And I would love to help you explore your own personal growth through the use of astrology. Great. Okay. See you next time, everyone.